Hello, everyone. This is Varun Agarwal, Senior Associate Editor at ETCIO, and I welcome you all to today's panel discussion brought to you by ETCIO in partnership with Coursera. Today's topic of discussion is an era of disruption, future proofing enterprises by building a next gen workforce. Now, today's business leaders are faced with overwhelming competing challenges and uncharted waters as they continue to navigate the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. These leaders are facing this ambiguity with a spirit of reinvention, accelerating digital transformation, establishing variable cost structures, and implementing agile operations. Today, enterprises are reevaluating their data and cloud infrastructures as they're going digital heavy. In this ever evolving technology landscape, enterprises need to be future ready and build their workforce with the emerging skills of tomorrow. So, in today's discussion, we'll tackle some key issues, including how to tackle this change, how you should adopt emerging technologies across your workforce, keeping in mind change management issues. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers for today. Our first speaker of the day is Veena Jade, who's the head IT at Philips. Welcome, Veena.
Hey, hi.
Hi, good
First of
afternoon.
all, thank you, ET Group for making me part of this panelist, and glad to be here. And I'm part of Philips for last 15 years. I'm heading the India subcontinent, and also I'm partnering with Asia Pacific region for various group functions activities. Thank you.
Pleasure
Looking
to have
forward.
you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker of the day is Tathagat Verma, who is the Senior Director and Head Technology Strategy at Walmart Global Tech India. Welcome, Tathagat.
Thank you, Varun. Good afternoon, everyone. I lead the strategy and operations at Walmart Global Tech based out of Bangalore, India.
Welcome. Our next speaker of the day is Shankar Krishnan, who is the Global Head of Analytics Capabilities at DXC Technology Analytics Service.
Hey, Varun, thanks for having me today. Thanks to ETCIO having me. My name is Shankar. I lead analytics capabilities for DXC Technology. I'm based out of Bangalore.
Pleasure to have you, Shankar. Our next speaker of the day is Sukant Patra, who is the Senior Director, Dell Digital Services at Dell Technologies. Welcome,
Hi,
Sukant.
Varun. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be part of this panel. I'm Sukan. I'm part of the Dell. I joined Dell since 10 years. I'm heading one of the global experience around services, data, and platform. So thank you.
Thanks. Our next speaker is Pushpendu Kumar Roy, who is the head IT at Birlasoft. Welcome, Pushpendu.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is a wonderful forum, and I would like to thank everyone in this forum, along with the guests who are there, and we will be discussing about the subject as we go along.
Thanks so much, Pushpendu. Our next speaker of the day is Krishnan Unni, who is the head of customer success APAC at Coursera. Welcome, Unni.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody and to all the panelists. My name is Krishnan Unni, as Varun said. I head the customer success for Asia Pacific at Coursera. Pleasure to be here.
Well, before we begin, I would like to request all attendees to feel free to pose their questions to any of our speakers in the Q&A window. We'll take up live questions post the panel discussion. Now, without further ado, let me start the conversation with Veena. So, Veena, when you talk about this paradigm shift that we've seen in the past 1 year, what is the top of the mind challenge when it comes to upskilling your workforce with the technologies of the future?
So for me, the one of the key challenges, so because there's very uncertainties, right? What we have faced in the 2020, it is something which never has been imagined probably. I think for me, being in the IT and also heading the core infrastructure and also building the core application stack for the Philips Global. So for me, the major challenge I felt was the how do we see that our infrastructure, basically the fundamental, the core element which can help the business to keep running, because we have made people to continue to work continuously, either remote and things like that. So that is a very essential part, that how do we keep the workforce already available all the time 24/7, because I'm giving the services to my customers who are definitely working remotely, also on the field services or also on the customer service segment or also on the industrial segment. So that means we cannot stop any of these businesses. So we have to make sure that the workforce is available. So for me, most important challenge is how do we ensure that we have the right infrastructure, right connectivity, whether they are able to access whatever it is needed to run the business and have the business continuity. That is, for me, core infrastructure is very, very important. How best we digitize our core infrastructure, I think that will help us.
Thanks for that perspective. Tathagat, would you like to share some of your experiences when it comes to challenges faced during this period?
Sure, Varun. So, no, I think Veena brought some interesting challenges that we all went through last year. Our experiences have been very interesting because COVID, in some sense, actually created an opportunity. For example, earlier my classroom could only have 30 learners. Now my classroom could have virtually unlimited number of learners. So we have been actually having a lot of success with our e-learning and self-paced learning modules. We have been able to actually go very high on the enrollments and the quality of instruction simply because of being able to use that. Now, obviously, everything comes with its own cost. The biggest challenge that we find is how do we really make sure that we are able to create the same collegial environment of learning, experiential learning, because it's not always possible for people to always experiment and try out some piece of code. Because they are in their own learning module there and talk to each other. There is an element of social learning that is missing out there. We are working on those some of mechanisms and how we can really kind of turn it around and say how we can use those constraints as an enablers, just like how COVID became an enabler for us. Because earlier no one would have thought of really building a digital classroom, but we have been able to very successfully do that, Varun.
Interestingly, yesterday, we were just talking briefly about how important it is to get back to those coffee breaks that we used to have. Some people thought that it's just a waste of time, but like you pointed out, it's really important to have that connect with your peers. So Sankar, I see you smiling when Tathagat was talking about the opportunities that COVID brought in. So what kind of experience have you had in retraining the workforce?
Yeah, coffee break is not a waste of time. Huh? Coffee is much needed. Yeah. No, I think. Yeah, like Tagat was saying, COVID is turned out to be an opportunity in many ways, right? It started in a very grueling fashion, but it has really become an opportunity now for us to, bring a lot of people together on a virtual channel. This ETCIO event is an example, right? I mean, it's not like we had many of these events pre-COVID, but post-COVID, we're all transforming. We're trying to learn how to do these things, right? But from a primary challenge point of view, you asked this question, right? What is the primary challenge that you face when trying to retrain? It is more of, how do you say this? There is a face-to-face aspect that is very important in training, right? Which happens in classroom environments. If you go totally virtual, then some of those things get lost. So the right thing is, how do you bring together a mix of, audio, video, classroom aspects, face-to-face aspects, online aspects, and how do you bring together even a simple training? If, for example, I'm going to train somebody in let's say, a technology like Kubernetes, right, and that requires a lot of online, that requires experts to be part of the training panel and all of that. How do you bring together, a simulation of a 3-day classroom session, right, and a kind of a replacement for that, which would be equally efficient? That's where I think we are putting a lot of thought process into motion, right? How do we make it most effective in a way that the training becomes effective and practical, right? The practical aspect of it is very important. And how do you realize the ROI from that training, if you will, right? That's where I think a lot of thought process is going to, from a capability point of view.
I think that's an important point. What you're training and how much is it getting transferred to your workforce. So, come to that point. One of the things that we've seen is, a massive requirement for new age skills. And if you look at the existing talent pool, on one hand, you need to hire a lot of new people for those new skills, or you have to retrain. So, what is the challenge that you faced when it comes to getting that right talent pool?
Yeah. So thank you for that question, Varun. I think if you look at the way, if I look at the digital transformation, are 3 core pillars, like the technology, the process, and the people on simplifying ecosystem, making sure the workforce is productive, efficient, collaborative, create that infrastructure, right? And while you do that, how do you enable the business to be much agile, much faster, much scalar, fail fast, create a way of culture of fail fast, so that you experiment and move with a new way of doing things, right? Business is adapting really fast, right? Now, the third aspect to that is the people part, which is the most tougher part, as you rightly asked that, right? In terms of, there are three aspects to people, right? One is, how do you enable or train your existing workforce, right? And this change is not a technological change is happening. There are multifaceted, right? Not only technology probably change you can do, but there is a lot of the soft skills also you need to bring in, right? The kind of adaptability, the kind of change, kind of diverse team you need to build it, right? I think that's part. And second is, even in that pace, Dell, for example, our organization, Dell Digital itself is more than 10,000 people globally, right? And how do you move them fast enough to adapt to the new way? I think Sankara talked about some of the skills we used to do classroom or specific country, specific site. Now that is not possible, right? But then if you look at the other part of it, right, we could now scale. Now we could build a platform and we can enroll a huge number of people across the zones, right, regions we can enroll, right? So one aspect is how to upskill the team with not only the hard skill, even the soft skills also, because that's the soft skills is the top most important part, right? Then hiring and attracting, right? That itself is a different challenge, right? If you ask me, there are multi-generation we have. There is millennial, the Gen X, Gen Z. How do you engage all this generation in the new way of work, right? And the biggest thing is, can you make their day-to-day job more challenging, more responsible? Because that's what the generation looks at it, right? So that's another aspect of challenge in terms of how do you. So what I've seen is when you build a diverse team, not only the gender diversity is a fundamental, but beyond gender diversity, then that helps in terms of ability to keep the team and motivate the team, right? And how do you retain, right? What kind of reward recognitions? How do you enable them to start contributing to beyond their work? Because some of the generation look at flexible workforce is one, right? How do you design your flexible so that it's not a mandatory they need to be in office? They can come anywhere, they can work from anywhere. This is a different generation. This is a iPad generation, which is in the system. They are much more collaborative, much more innovative, right? So all the three aspects need to come. It's a big challenge all across, but we are evolving. But the results are phenomenal, right? If you can crack it, it's an ongoing process, and we're on the path.
So that's an interesting point, the agility of the workforce that you're talking about. Is this also corresponding to the rise of the gig workers that we are seeing in some of the organizations? Is that something that you're also looking at?
Absolutely. Look at that, right? There are I think to Sankara's point, I'll bring that, right? One of the things what we have seen in this virtual environment is that how can you engage in a continuous basis in a remote basis, right? For example, we started bringing a lot of gamification concepts, right? If I take an example of football match, right? If you take a football match, if there are no scoreboards in a football match, you look at the behavior of the players will be different. The moment you put a scoreboard, the game starts, right? Everybody wants to win. So what I've seen is there are two aspects, right? When you wherever possible, bring that gamification concepts, right? Where you can allow people to, be part of the game and challenging there, and it creates an accelerated learning, right? And that's very key, right? So how you engage them in a very, very interactive way, right? Absolutely.
Thanks for that perspective, Sukan. Pushpendra, some of the interesting points that our panelists brought about regarding attracting talent and retraining talent, both seem to be very challenging right now. How do you make sure you have the right balance where you're able to retrain on one hand at the right pace and at the same time also attract the best of minds?
Before coming to training and retraining and building up the skill set and upscaling them over a period of time and ensuring that they are up to the mark, and even after a training has happened, we need to ensure that the people who have attained a certain skill, they regularly go through re-skilling so that they are always on the edge of it. That is one aspect. I'll touch base on it. Before that, what I'll do is I'll touch base upon a situation whereby we as an organization, way back post 9/11 scenario, we had to build our entire organization roadmap aligned to a scenario where we can continue our operation, business continuity, and everything all together. And when we talk about it, we talk about a complete scenario where the organization in itself does not exist to a place where we don't operate from our facilities. So we have actually built up the technology, our application, our customer interface. Say when we work on various applications and all together, we need to ensure that when people get and log into the customer network, all necessary firewall ports and all these things to be open. So what we did is basically we set up an environment and we used to test it out almost every fortnight to ensure that things are there in place. And this has been a practice. So with the pandemic coming in, we were ready with the scenario. So it was never a challenge for us. I'll touch base on the situation and then I'll come to the how we build our team on the skill set. So we work on projects on technology now all together. We ensured that we split up the team and all the teams are spread across multiple geolocations, including on-site, offshore, and all these things. And each of the team members were able to operate on various customer support and applications at that point of time. So we did that planning exercise all together. Now, what we did from the learning point of view is that we have set up web-based integration across the globe. Like we used to conduct our in-house meetings, even gathering of all our employees across the globe, which was in a scale of more than 5,000 people, web-based. So we have been using this as an option. All our various account managers handling various accounts and projects were given basically various web-based what is called like what we are doing today, the Zoom application. We have got web-based integrated system where they can get into communication with the customers, they can share application, they can do online activity. So we have did all this planning together. Now coming to the skill set, what we used to do is that when we had people working on projects, we used to get something from thing called boot camp. And boot camp was a system by means of which we used to get freshers from the various universities and all these things and skill them into various technology. When we did a skilling of all these things, we used integrated learning system. We had systems by means of which people used to go log in. They were basically integrated learning system where they can go through the online classes type of features. And then after a session or so, they need to conduct a test and a scoreboard used to be there. That was basically a system where we were building the freshers into the system. Once they have attained a certain level of score and all these things, they are good enough. We used to make them a part of the team, which is non-billable resources as a shadow resources. So they go and start learning with the actual team who are working on the projects. So we used to build that thing. So that is how we were building. And at the same time, on the basis of this, we were able to build something called a pyramid structure for our people together. So we were never on the situation of dearth of resources and on the technology front. So that was basically one of the ways where we have been training and retraining these people. Whenever there is a need of any new technology coming and all these things, we used to have web-based learning system all to be attended. And then it was also a part of the mandatory that after each and every resource who is already on a technology, which is basically run by HR and talent acquisition team that we have, they used to ensure that each and every team member or an employee working on a specific technology within the organization does a refresh course and appear for a test to ensure the person is on top of the skill, and also if there are any upgradation in the technology, also builds it up. So that is basically the formula that we have been using throughout.
I think that's an excellent way of engaging employees, and congratulations to you for that. Krishnan, I would like to bring you in. I just wanted to have some thoughts from you on what are the trends that you've observed with your interaction with a lot of global enterprises when it comes to training during this period.
So thanks, Varun, and fascinating to hear all the comments, and no surprising that skilling, and skill gaps, are the top discussion points. Before I jump into, I'd like to give a brief overview of Coursera. Coursera, as many of you know, is a global learning platform with close to 80 million learners, 200 plus partnerships, and close to 7,000 customers across, government, businesses, and campus. Now, what this essentially does is it gives us a good vantage point to observe what learners are learning across the globe, across various geographies and demographics. And so let me start by sharing some very interesting insights on what we are finding at a macro level, as well as based on some research points. And as I present, so let me start. So so the concept of double disruption. So one is the automation related, technological related challenges that we have, in addition to the, current disruption from pandemic induced lockdown, then you have economic contraction, how we are going to consume technology, and essentially technology adoption by companies are going to, transform the way skilling is going to happen, tasks, jobs by 2025. And I want to, drive some key insights from the World Economics Forum Future of Job report. The first is by 2025, you will have almost 85 million of jobs being displaced. I mean, that's a huge number of, and you can, understand the importance of why skilling is the number one, topic that we had while we were discussing earlier. 47, close to 50% of core skill will change for workers by 2025. And has a lot of statistics. Every couple of years, you have technology changing. Almost 50% of the technologies basically are becoming legacy, which is either they are not sustainable or they are just not making the cut. 40% of the workforce to operate remotely. Pandemics are already shown that the possible new normal is likely to be anywhere, anytime, and anytime work. So you will have a large population already working remotely. So how do we ensure that we are able to adjust to this new normal? And finally, 91% of the businesses will accelerate digitalization. And a lot of this essentially happened because of pandemic also, moving from, physical spaces to virtual, meeting. I mean, there's not a single day when we are not connected to Zoom. The consumption of technology has gone through the roof. As a result, digital transformation is a number one topic, is a number one charter with all the organizations. Now, what this essentially means is that skill gaps is on top of mind of business leaders. And we derived some of these insights from PwC's and Deloitte's 2020 reports, where it said that 55% of business leaders say the skill gap is preventing them from innovating effectively. What this essentially means? It essentially means that technology skill gaps makes innovation a very uphill, ladder to climb, not easy. I mean, there are people who have a certain skill, and then the rate at which disruption is happening is not allowing organizations and consumers equally to plug that gap. The second is the demand for high-skilled laborers to create, to build, to maintain very highly effective systems is increasing, both from technology as well as non-technology companies. And as the second, the point says, 44% say the skill gap is preventing them from pursuing opportunities in the market, which essentially says that if you are failing to innovate, you are going to fall behind. And with the rate which disruption is happening, with more than 53% a workforce needing change in their skills and capability in the next 3 years. If you are not innovating, you are likely to fall behind. Not only fall behind, probably not even exist. And I want to quote something from PwC's 22nd annual Global CEO survey, which said that almost a fourth of CEOs reported that they had to cancel or shelve an important project due to inability to find people with necessary skills. And about 50% of the CEOs said that skill gap was a major, factor in which was preventing them from pursuing key opportunities in the market. What it all boils down to one simple thing: skill gap. How do we innovate? How do we plug that gap, which allows us organizations to innovate and ultimately, contribute to their business growth? And this brings us to a very interesting research that we did at Coursera, which is called the Global Skills Index, where we studied what would be the top trending skills of tomorrow and some of the key critical skills. And this was drawn from the data that we have of close to 80 million, users, and encompass 60 countries, close to 10 industries, and 11 fields of study across business, technology, data science. And the outcome of this research was we were able to identify 30 unique roles that will basically command tomorrow's critical skills. What it also shows you is that industries which are with more, skilled talent are likely to, go through, will see a very good performance and has a great impact on their stock. Apart from just driving, long-term digital transformation, digital skills also will have a key role in how companies, respond to a pandemic. So something like COVID-19 hit us. A lot of companies, Dell is a classic example. I was talking to Sukant yesterday on how they were able to, move their 100,000 workforce overnight to a virtual setup as a result of great, transformation that was already taking place at Dell. And not only this, with push to online and remote, how do we really plug digital skills that are critical to short-term business operation, because the need to manage these situations are becoming very, very important. And as this graph shows, there's a direct correlation between the industry stock performance versus the skill proficiency. And we essentially have looked at some key skills across business, technology, data science, and what has been the impact of some of the larger companies on their individual stock, performance. And one of the interesting things is that the correlation between stock returns in the previous month vis-a-vis the skill proficiency in the technology domain is 43% that you can see. So you can understand the importance of plugging the skill back, focusing on what is important. Not only that, also visualizing what is coming as, organizations prepare the necessary skills for their, workforce. And that brings us to the question, how does a future-ready organization essentially look like? And we were able to uncover some important pillars. The first one being technologies. How do CTOs really keep up pace with the best and the latest technology? Now, CTOs, unlike the past, are not just keepers or managers of technology life cycle. They also have to innovate. They have to visualize what is going to come. They have to ultimately, contribute to the growth of their company. If the primary, barrier is to achieving this goal is a skills gap, then they need to plug that gap. They need to plan. They need to map the right skill to the people, and essentially they have to get a skill development framework which can allow their company to move forward. The second big is talent transformation. At the end of the day, we are all trying to solve one basic puzzle. How do we transform our talent? And essentially, when we work with organization, we see a couple of things, very, very clearly. And I can break down this into three pieces: upskilling, reskilling, and literacy. Upskilling essentially is focusing on people who are already at a certain level. How do we make them, proficient? How do we develop capabilities so they can move to the next level? Essentially happens with a lot of platform vendors, the Salesforce of the organization, the Microsoft, Oracle, and the AWS kind of organization. Reskilling is the second, bucket. We see a lot of legacy technology, especially with the advent of cloud. How do we take a lot of those skill sets which are not now required on the infrastructure side, for example, and help those learners, get onto some of the newer technologies? So you don't need people to manage servers, storage, all that has gone to cloud. So how do we utilize some of those resources to learn, say, for example, a UI or a UX, or into a development, or an AWS architect, those, or developing cybersecurity, cloud as some of these key skills. And finally, what we see is literacy. So technology is not only for technologists. Technology is for every buddy. When we work with organization, one of the requests that we get is, and it's a fabulous dialogue to have with a lot of organization, is how do we ensure that everybody in the organization understands technology? Now, this is not deep skill, but essentially being comfortable talking about a wide range of technology at a basic level. So that's the third thing that we do. Finally, the third aspect, which is a very crucial aspect to building a future ready organization, is culture. And this is the whole definition of culture has changed since the time we have moved from a physical to a virtual world. Collaboration, communication, some of those key aspects which some of the early panelists spoke about, how getting together over a cup of coffee for a lot of front end sales and pre-sales is so important, while being at office does not happen, has a very immediate impact on culture. How do we ensure that different parts of the organization get together, learn, and ensure that that they are all going towards in the right direction with a common vision of taking their organizations faster and healthier. Now, coming to the upskilling narrative, and I would like to spend some time on especially the technological challenges around how our CTOs looking at it. And McKinsey recommends that some of the training budgets should be absolutely become a key strategic lever for adapting to the next normal. What does that essentially mean? It also essentially means that you leverage some of the ready-made, learner journeys and products that a lot of our partners are bringing to the table. Leverage those, focus on some of the key areas, cloud, data science, cybersecurity, full stack. These are some of the things that we keep hearing from a lot of organizations. How do we ensure that organizations start looking at training budgets and ensure that those become a strategic point in their journey? What this essentially does is this essentially helps you to address three things. First, it makes your organization much more resilient to disruption. There is a certain amount of work that goes in skilling people, and there is a certain amount of talent pipeline that keeps building it. Second, as you can see, 49% are creating a talent stream of just-in-time skills and abilities to rapidly bridge the skill. What does it mean? This means that how do you create talent within? A lot of organizations we talk saying there's considerable amount of time, effort, and money spent on hiring people from outside. How do we ensure that while hiring from outside will always happen, how do we reduce the dependency on hiring people from outside, and how do we really build that robustness, that pipe of talent coming from within? And third, how do we ensure that continuous learning becomes a mantra, within our organization? As I keep saying, while change is the only constant, now learning is the only constant that is happening in the world. You have to learn all the time, every day, every hour of your journey, whether it is work or whether it is personal. And with this change in philosophy and learning behavior, Coursera envisions a new model for enterprise learning. So this essentially focuses on the next generational workforce which says there are a certain amount of things I can do with what I want to, where do I want to reach with this disruption that is happening around the world. And that is where we look at learning as a journey rather than an individual component. So we bring world-class content in partnerships with universities, with our industry partners like Google, IBM, Amazon, Microsoft, etc. We are able to analyze all the data that already resides in our platform, close to 80 million people. What are they learning? So can we understand based on a learning that is happening on our platform to surface what is important, what are the in-demand skills, where is the technology going, where are the business skills going, where are the human skills going? Can we help learners to understand where to invest time? Can we help organization to understand where can we really work with you to narrow down focus? Third, while we speak a lot about content, we speak a lot about content being the king. We are also looking at how do we give a complete experience to a learner who's not only looking at content, who is also looking at what are the kind of skills that they have to develop, but also giving them a space to develop what we call as develop by application, hands-on learning, which includes assessments, in-course assessment, understanding where you are at a point in time. What does it take you to move next level? What are the areas that you need to improve, along with leveraging guided project, which allows you to play around with a project, which allows you to dirty your hands on a technology, which allows you to solve a project, code something, and not only that, you can also, as organization, privately author all these projects back into our platform. And finally, for organization, which is the most important part, how do you assimilate all this learning and derive valuable insight? And it is gone are the days where it is there are X number of users on our platform, they are consuming so much hours. How can we move them from saying what are the skills that are being developed within the organization? Where do you stand with respect to your peers? What are some of the skills that you are trending well? What are some of the skills you are not trending well? What are the inferences that you can draw from what is happening from an overall, skill development initiatives within the organization? These are some of the, this is how we are looking at the entire journey, so not just from a content, but looking at content, skills, aligning that to relevant skills, then giving an opportunity to practice, assess, and finally giving fabulous insights to organization to derive, value out of a platform, which can be aligned straight to business outcomes. So that's pretty much what I have to say. A lot aligns with what some of my earlier panelists had to say. Thank you, Varun.
Thanks for that perspective, Uni. Veena, coming to you, Uni said some context around what all kind of learnings that the organization needs today. However, one of the challenges is who takes responsibility of this change. We've for long depended on the HR teams, the learning teams, but is it now time to take this beyond the HR and the learning teams and to maybe other roles, including IT?
Wonderful, Varun. I think it is a very interesting question. I can tell you. I think this is also a challenge we see every day, because most of the time, as a just as a corporate or as a non-corporate, what happens is most of the time we see learning is something, it is HR or is it somebody in the talent acquisition team who has to take care of the trainings and things like that. Also, some companies, I mean, including Philips, we have a great university setup actually in the back end. So highly people say that, okay, university will publish some course, okay, I will join and I will do. But we are in the world of Agile, so that means it is not that HR has to simulate all the learnings. It is also, it should come on the job. So I can give you a couple of examples what we did. I mean, see, I think this pandemic also opened up a lots of great learning opportunities. I can tell you, it has just unlocked the situation. Huh? So a couple of situations I can tell you. So who takes in charge of the learning? I mean, for me, most of the time it comes to the IT bucket, because moment we say that we set up a collaboration system. Say, for example, during the pandemic, what happens? We had to connect hundreds, 500s, thousands of people. So I used to arrange a webinars for my health system team, the business leaders, including towards the hospitals, and where they had to arrange a lot of webinars, a lot of training courses and all. But they should know how the technology works, because it is very important. I think also Uni mentioned already, how do we upskill? Because it is not that people should also know how to use the technology. Unless we don't know how to use the technology, be it a laptop or be it an iPhone or a very simple Microsoft Teams. So we should know how do we unlock all the potentials of that. So it was a very, very challenging for IT to educate our business users or the customers. How do we ensure that this is all? So the in charge of the learning is not just the HR or somebody, it is all on the job. And that is a trend at this moment, because we had to take the in charge of learning that, okay, I understand this technology, how do I use this collaboration, how do I make use of this technology, be it a transactional technology or be it a collaboration technology or be it something else. So this way, it is not that we had to depend on HR, it is a distributed responsibility, I would say that at the time. And most of the time, it also happens that IT remains one of the key responsible person, because if I invest money in the time in introducing some digitization or from say simple, for example, in the digital world, we have introduced lots of bots last year because of the finance back office has to continue to work and support my finance hub. So by introducing the bot, it does not help because they should also know how to make use of the bot, how that bot works, and at what time they have to simulate the bot. So this is all the training. So this is all something, but it is also responsibility of the individual. So because as Uni mentioned, he brought it very clearly. There are few things. One is upskilling, cross-skilling, or how do we ensure that the skill is somebody, the people should have a passion to learn also. That is also very important. That is where the distribution happens. It is individuals has to take the responsibility, not that HR or business leaders or line managers are important to go and tell, okay, so because we are in the remote situation, we are in most agile way now today. So we should experiment every day morning. We should know that what is that I had to learn more, go to the office. Nowadays, we sit at home and most of the time we work more than 8 hours. So we should also understand how do we increase our productivity. So these are all comes with learning, self-learning. So for me, now learning is more self-learning rather than somebody is going and poking that, okay, you have to go and attend this training. So it is a distributed responsibility. And also it is a self-intuited. Actually, somebody has to have a passion for learning. That is very, very important. Because if I talk to my... Yeah, because if I talk to... Yeah, just sorry, 1 minute, I just want to close. Because if I talk to my business leaders, what happens is, if I talk to my sales executive, he will have a same question, but my business leader will also have a same question. But I should frame my answer in such a way that I can just go and tell my sales executive, okay, come here and I can explain you how this works. But if I'm explaining to my business leader how this technology works, I should create some sort of a clear set of a demonstration, right? End to end, how it works and all. So this is how I'm going to translate my technology to the learning, and also people should be able to accept that, okay, it is a very easy, I will accept it and I will take it further. So it all depends. It is a completely distributed responsibility, Varun. I would say that it is not just one person or HR, I would say that.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone has to own up to the reskilling. And yes. Coming to another point, and a very fundamental point, which a lot of our viewers are also asking right now, is how do you really anticipate what technology will be big going forward? So if you're looking at self-learning, what technology do you go for? Or if you're looking at retraining your workforce, how do you place the right bets?
Sure, Varun. I think that's like $1 million question for all of us. Not just for the training. I would even take a step backward and say it's a fundamental question of how do we invest in our technology and the products itself. Like how do we decide there? So metaphorically and philosophically, as someone said, I don't watch where the puck is. I watch where the puck is going, and that's how I really do that. But it's easier said than done, right? I mean, we cannot obviously do that. What we try and do is obviously as a data-driven organization, when we have sitting at our where we are sitting, we have an ability to see how the customer trends are evolving over a period of time. We have an ability to cull out the data from the petabytes and zettabytes of data that we are talking about in terms of culling out what are the trends. For example, how are really the users and the shoppers looking at buying habits? So for example, when COVID struck, we realized that people had a lot of concerns in terms of going to the store and buying things there because of a lot of ignorance at that point in time about COVID, because it was a very new thing at that time. We acted very swiftly, and the entire organization swung into action in terms of saying, okay, how do we really enable this class of customers so that they are able to do a shopping in a more comfortable manner? So whether it is order online and pick it up from the store. So we created things like a curbside pickup, for example, where people did not even have to go to the store. Now, these were things where we had no idea. I mean, what technologies would it mean? What will be the user experience, for example, there? Now, those are the things where we have to really learn very fast there. The key thing there today, in my view, is that there may not be any right answers or templates available to your question, Varun. What we need to have is really the data that is able to guide us and advise and say, hey, these are the general directions, these are the what we call weak signals. The weak signal reading ability, in my view, is very important for an organization, and then coupled with the agility. So what we did, my team and I, we are responsible for the technical enablement here in IDC India. What we have been able to do is we have been able to take that data and really come back and say, how fast can we really deliver some solutions? Now, in that process, it's possible, just like an innovative idea, sometimes not every idea will go right. What is important is to apply the agility filter, learn where it is going and amplify that, like double click on that one. And what is not working there, find out if it is not really the right thing to do, move on to something else there. So this is really applying a very lean startup kind of a thinking to the whole learning paradigm itself, and really being able to learn there. So that's one thing that I would say from a process standpoint there. From a technology standpoint, what we have tried to do is we have tried to create what I call as the whole Medici effect. The whole idea being that we don't really confine people to swim lanes of learning. So one of the things that we started last year is the weekly Tech Bites, where we said that we are going to run 8 parallel streams. So these were technology, culture, design, product management, data science. All these things were running together, and these are like weekly bites that are available to us. Some of the speakers talked about the need for continuous learning. I take it to the next level where I call it as a drip feed learning, which is almost like a drip feed sort of a analogy. So what we did was that over a period of 6 months, we had almost 50 hours of learning in 8 tracks available to us. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to give an opportunity for the associates to form so many connections in their mind that they are able to proactively think and say, hey, what if this could happen? What if this could happen there? Without really a problem coming their way, they are able to assimilate some of those things there. And we have had some of very interesting ideas come out of those things where people said, hey, this is interesting. I didn't know we were doing something like that. Can I go and try out in my own area there? So one example I'll give you, and then I'll stop there, is the whole innovation sandbox that we have created, where what we are saying is, how can we really enable the associates to basically try out some of those ideas there? Can we take away the impediments that normally stop individuals to pursue a technology? So we want to give that kind of a sandbox to them so that they can try out ideas and build something on their own. These are just some of the ideas that come to my mind, Varun.
Thanks for that, Tathagat. And it's actually quite inspiring to see an organization of your size looking at a fail-fast approach, or more of a startup approach, so to say, for such a large organization. Shankar, how practical is it for other organizations? Maybe you would like to take your example. How practical or challenging, rather, it is to look at a fail-fast approach, and at the same time, look at a continuous learning approach for the entire organization.
Yeah, Varun. Last year we looked at this, right? And then what we said is the capability and the competency cannot be left to a HR or a training department or education, research, learning and development. So we formed a vertical within each service line, which will dedicated focus on that, right? So my job, somebody was saying who will be responsible, right? That was one of the questions. My head is on the line if capability and competency is not improved, right? So it's a dedicated function with a leader in charge who is going to make sure that the individual competency as defined in the competency journey plan, plus the capability of the organization in terms of the technologies, in terms of assets and accelerators and whatnot, right? Case studies, collaterals, how the customer feedback, everything gets centralized and gets integrated into the mainstream. So that's something that DXC started last year, and we have institutionalized it. The second is, Tathagat had spoken about some of the innovation sandbox and some of the other ideas. We are pursuing similar ideas. We are forming chapters for each of the technologies like Azure and AWS and Google and all of that. We are bringing a community of people together from all regions. We have got huge operations in North Central Europe, in US, in Asia, and all of that. And this is a $1.9 billion organization now, right? Analytics and engineering at DXC. So we have a huge setup, and we are bringing people through communities where we are trying to exchange ideas within the group. The reason we are doing this is, AWS, Azure, and GC, Google Cloud Platform, right? Just if you take these three, just guess the number of tools they have between the three, right? You will not be able to guess. It is 731 tools, right? That's an insane amount of tools. How do you build expertise in that type of a thing, right? So some of these questions, and I see some Q&A in the chat, could be like, where do I focus? There is AI, there's ML, there's data science, there's this, that, right? So what we did is we just formed a 5-layer pyramid, and I will just briefly touch upon it. We said information management, which is database, data warehouse. Then we took it to data engineering at scale, which is all the structured, unstructured data. Then we said there is enterprise platform like Azure, AWS, Google. Then we said it's data science, machine learning, and then cognitive and narrative. So we found just a simple layer, and we assessed all our folks, right? 25,000 folks where do you sit today in each of these layers? And where do you need to move, right, along your competence journey plan? A very simple example, if somebody is an SQL expert, if he wants to move to a NoSQL database skill, right, the SQL to NoSQL becomes the skill journey plan, right? And then you can plan for that. If somebody is doing data engineering at scale today with, let's say, a Hadoop, and they want to move to an Azure stack and become an Azure full stack architect, then we create a plan around that, and we create an 18-month plan of how he can go from an Azure data factory, a person who has a knowledge of Azure data factory, on all the way to Azure architect, and similar such plans. So we have created a number of such career paths moving from one layer to the other, right? So that we understand very clearly the competence journey plan of the person and marry it with the top down, right? As Sagar said, it's $1 million question. It eventually will be based on the demand that is there in the market. So how are you sensing the trends? For example, Snowflake came a couple of years back, and in 2 years, it's now a $100 billion company. I mean, they existed before 2 years, but basically in the last 2 years, they exploded from maybe a $5 billion company to $100 billion. Databricks is another example. Data IQ, and so many different examples. We'll be running out of time if I talk about all of that. But those are trends you track. So you have to get ahead of Snowflake in 12 months before it arrives. Otherwise, you are lost, right? You don't have the expertise there. So it's about catching the trends. Cannot be said better than that, right? Go where the puck is going to be, not where it is today, right? So you go there, you have to continuously sense the trends, and so that's the capability in the competence unit, basically what it does, right? I track it every day. I track what's going on in industry, where things are going, where do we need people to be trained in the next, not just in the next 3 months, but what are the technologies that are coming up on annual, what's going on in AI, what is Gartner talking about, the top 10 trends, and so on and so forth, right? So that's very important for an organization to stay ahead.
So let me segue from the technology trends to actually how do you consume that knowledge. So Sukant, when you talk about tens of thousands of employees getting retrained, everyone has their own sort of learning path. And this is a question coming from the audience as well, that how do you make sure that every generation, so young and the older generation, are able to sustain their jobs and be productive at the same time when it comes to being retrained on new technology? Because younger folks usually have that higher capacity of consuming more content and retrain quickly. But what do you do about the more experienced and slightly older generation?
Thank you, Varun. I think very interesting points. So let me add a couple of examples from Dell side, right? I think over the years how this evolved, right? If you look at back 3 to 5 years back, we are more as a project organization, where IT was driving a lot of projects for large business capabilities, and we moved into from waterfall to iterative to agile, right? That's the process wise. Now, when we are moving into new digital transformation, is a significant shift, technology, process, and people, everything changing together, right? Now we are moving to a product organization, right? And this is a significant transformation we are trying, right? In a product, and that means the roles are collapsing. There are fewer roles. We don't have a specific, data engineer or application engineer, everything collapsing into a full stack development, right? And the product teams are very matured, less number of roles, and they're directly expected to work with business partners. So they need to acquire the soft skill of empathy, understand the business acumen, and move much faster with leveraging some of the modernization technology, CI/CD, DevOps, all this part, right? So you're right, right? While we have created a platform, we also created a role specific, for example, a product management side, there are some trainings, coaching, on-demand classes, which we enable them. We also created a lot of something called coaching circles, because in a typical remote scenario, the coaching circles brings all the experts, SMEs together, right? And that helps in terms of share the experience, collectively learn, right? And then while we talk about full stack development, which is on demand, and there are different levels of people go through beginner, intermediate, or expert, right? So that you decide which one to sign up. But I'll go back to the existing generation, right? Existing generation, there are two aspects we are doing different, right? One is even for the leaders and managers, right? What is our leaders are capable of handling this transformation, or managers in the new world, right? So we launched many of the, I think I heard many of the panelists talk about, there are a lot of tracks, there are a lot of technology councils, architecture council, a lot of these topics too. But we also introduced something called pair programming. So any of the manager leader can sign up, and one of the junior team member, technical team member will pair with you over the 6 weeks to 6 months to learn some of the technology. You go through entire cycle. The moment the leaders, managers understand, go through, it creates, you understand the challenges and what works well and what doesn't work, right? And then you appreciate much better, right? And that same thing, and then same thing we do. Some people don't change, right? It's not easy. I mean, it may be very hard to say that the change is tough, right? And this change is significantly changed. And some majority of the people get upskilled, either soft skill or hard technology skills. Some people, you have to define a role where you can go to, right? Sometimes it's a very hard decision what you do with that people, and that's the transition happens over the time, right? So it's somebody rightly said, this is an opportunity, right? We need to leverage that opportunity, right? And if I go back to one of the quotations from Winston Churchill, right? Never miss a good disruption, right? So use this disruption to accelerate your transformation and upskill your team. And the moment you bring the culture of, I think Uni talked about the cultural shift of learning and relearning, then you will less worried about the technology. The technology is continue evolving. In my 20 plus years, I've seen so many technologies coming in. I'm sure another 3 to 5 years, different technology we'll be talking about. It's all about the culture and ability to unlearn and learn. I think that's the fundamental, I would put it.
Absolutely. Taking the same question to Pushpendra. Pushpendra, how do you actually bring in that culture of unlearning and relearning in a large organization?
So what we do is basically, I'll set up a scenario. Basically, as an organization, we need to ensure that the learning, reskilling, upskilling, what we talk about, or even cross training that happens, cross skilling that needs to be done, is not only limited to the resources who are working on the projects, but at the same time, we need to ensure that the leadership team, also the sales and the marketing team who interacts with the customers, are also aligned to it. So what we have is basically, we have got different verticals on which we have working for the customers. On each of these technology verticals, at the end of a year, a financial year for us is basically April to March. So what we do is basically, up till December, we work out with all our existing customers to understand how we have gone through it. Next, what we do is, with all big customers over there, we set up a forum in which we set up a dialogue to train, understand, and set up a technology forum with the customers in which we talk about new emerging technology. We talk about existing customer applications and what technology we are using. And we also identify what is the customer CTO basically or a roadmap for the next year. Out of these discussions that we happen to coordinate with all big customers, the major segment of it, we funnel out what is going to be the key technology requirement for us in the next financial year. Now, when we engage a customer, we talk about the new technology. We know what is the technology we are engaged with him. Then we talk about what is the emerging trends in that particular technology, and what is the customer expectation and the roadmap going ahead along with these challenges, and what we can do best to serve the customers. From that, we derive what is the expectation of the customers, what are the technology to go through. Having defined that, we come back into our organization. And then the budgeting, when the exercise happens all together, at that point of time, we within the organization set up a expectation and build up a forum in which we define which all technology we need to focus on, which is the expectation of the customers, which are the areas we need to.
Sorry to cut you there. We are running out of time. An interesting point you raised is about creating the right budget for the investments in new technologies and retraining. I will take this quick question to Uni. Uni, when it comes to defining return on investments on these learning sessions that you create within an organization, how do you make sure that it is quantitative?
Okay, so let me give you a perspective of Coursera here. We typically see the impact both qualitatively and qualitatively, and I'll give you some specific insights. First is how well are you performing on some key aspects like digital transformation? How are you transforming from a legacy kind of a technology to latest technology? That is a very clear goal. Second is how do you realize the value by implementing technology very well? So today, Coursera does not sit alone in an environment. There are LXPs with drive personalization experience. There are HRMS applications. How do we integrate well? How does the data flow? And what do you want? How can they make sense of the data? Third is what is the effect learning has on improving employee retention and engagement? And finally, which is a very key metric for us and which is very quantitative, the last two is reducing talent acquisition costs as a result of building sustainable talent pipeline, something which I spoke about in earlier saying, instead of focusing outside all the time, how do you develop skills within so that you have a steady pipeline of talent flowing in. Finally, I would also like to quote research work we did with global research firm IDC. They found that Coursera delivers a 746% ROI over a period of 3 to 4 years with measurable impacts on productivity, retention, employee mobility, and ability to train more. So yes, there are qualitative aspects of results, but there definitely is a quantitative aspect which can be straightly aligned to the learning that is going in within the organization and the skill gaps that you are planning to fill and take your company forward.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Muni. It was a great learning session for me personally. Learning from each of you here, and the kind of questions we got were quite insightful in themselves. So we would love to reconnect with more such topics. Until then, we would just like to thank everyone for joining in and just stay tuned for more sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.